Hi there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the new album from Alan Jackson, titled The Bluegrass Album. When people ask me why I listen to country music, or how they can get into country music, I point at Alan Jackson. It's really kind of hard for me to fully articulate why Alan Jackson stands out for me in terms of country singers from the 90s in a way that so few of his peers end up doing. Now, he is a superb musician with a gift for catchy, memorable melodies and lyrics with superb flow, and he's completely unafraid to write political songs, and he's intelligent enough to yet work in several layers of nuance within those songs. He's a man who actively never seems to get angry with his material, but you can tell he's not the man you're ever going to want to screw with, as evidenced by his legendary performance in 1999 at the Country Music Awards, where he switched his song mid-solo from one of his own, Papa Top, to George Jones's Choices, in protest for how one of the legends of country music and a close friend of his had been pressured to trim his performance for commercials and had thus bowed out of the ceremony. Alan Jackson was pissed about it, and he proved to be a real class act with that performance. And as a neo-traditionalist country singer, one of the most successful those at that, Alan Jackson has been fighting for decades to preserve the historic spirit and culture of the medium. Besides releasing a ton of amazing music in this vein, he also recorded with George Strait a song called Murder on Music Row, where he directly criticized the slide of country music towards the mainstream, thanks to acts like Garth Brooks and Shania Twain. So, really, it was only a matter of time before the lead crusader of traditional country music came back in a big way, with the slide of country, yet again, towards the mainstream. And while acts like Chris Young have accumulated some fame and critical success, they don't really have the same critical clout and pull within Nashville that Alan Jackson does as a legend. And thus, I wasn't surprised in the slightest when Alan Jackson announced that his new album would be titled The Bluegrass Album, one that he has been threatening the country music industry that he would make for years now. Now, I gotta confess something right out of the gate here. I'm not all that familiar with bluegrass as a genre, but I do know enough to get by, and if I'm looking for a way into the genre, I really can't think of a better introduction than of a country legend who's been preparing for this album for nearly a decade. And thus, I chose to take a listen to Alan Jackson's new album, The Bluegrass Album, and just out of curiosity, maybe see if he was able to step it up when he's now in his 50s. So, how'd it turn out? Well, unsurprising to me, it's great. The Bluegrass Album by Alan Jackson is an incredibly solid, extremely listenable country bluegrass album that I can recommend without any qualms whatsoever. Is it perfect? No, not quite. Did it blow me away or really blow my mind? No, not really. But it is an example about how an industry legend can execute a genre shift, and does he have the precise care to pull it off? Oh, you bet he does. Now, it's also for that reason that I really don't have a lot to say about this album, because it's the kind of work that has a lot of singular purpose. Alan Jackson pulled together a selection of superb musicians, and they perform a bunch of bluegrass songs written by Alan Jackson and a series of covers. And there really isn't much of a narrative, through line, or greater story to this work. It's more of a genre exploration by an artist who very much knows what he's doing, particularly in the songwriting. You can tell that Alan Jackson has spent a lot of time refining and editing and preparing his material. And there's maybe only one spot on this album where I feel that there is the slightest slip in technical lyricism. Honestly, there are points that I feel a little bit too polished and a little bit too perfect, and they lose a little bit of that organic flavor that is quintessential for bluegrass, but really that's a small complaint indeed. And in terms of lyrical content, Alan Jackson proves, once again, that he's one of the best country songwriters in the industry for crafting a relatable, believable country song. And there are plenty of times that I had to pull at the writer's list because I couldn't tell which songs were written by Alan Jackson and which were written by bluegrass artists, which is a major plus for his album's degree of authenticity. He clearly knows how to write within the genre, and the album really comes into its own at the midpoint. After the Adam Wright penned song Ain't Got Trouble Now that I really enjoyed, about a man who's stripping away of all his material concerns after everything goes wrong, well, you ain't got trouble now. Then we get the achingly sad Blue Ridge Mountain song, which followed in the vein of Don't Take the Girl by Tim McGraw, but takes it a step further and only prolongs the misery. And then the fun little Tie Me Down, which takes a Road Warrior song and gives it an interesting twist. Hell, I even really like the album opening track, Long Hard Road. It's the sort of song that had a little bit of an edge to it, and I didn't think Alan Jackson would be bringing that sort of song to the table on this album. And you know what? I dug the hell out of it, even though it was a little bit long. If I'm going to nitpick at all on lyrical content, it'd be that the sentimentality throughout the album gets a little bit complacent at points. It doesn't seem to be as working as hard. But then again, This is bluegrass, and you could expect the occasional bits of earnest corniness in flavor of big, grandiose emotion. On instrumentation and production, I really have very few issues there. In particular, I like the banjo work for Sammy Shalor, the mandolin by Adam Steffi, and Tim Crouch did an excellent job on the fiddle. But you could tell the entire group had a ton of professional skill, and the solos strewn throughout the album were both authentic and easily complex enough to impress. But it is in the instrumentation that I will raise my biggest nitpick, and that is with the pace of the songs, the tempo. I understand that a slower song might be better suited to Alan Jackson's vocal delivery, but you'd think that within bluegrass the tempo would be a little bit faster, and I can easily believe that the musicians here are talented enough to play at that quickened speed. But the bigger problem is that with a slower tempo, a few of the songs do drag a little bit, and if they increase the speed, I reckon that the album would have flowed a little bit better. But then again, Alan Jackson is not a fast-spinning bluegrass singer. He's a country singer with a more measured, much more controlled delivery, which leads to my final nitpick, if anything. As much as I like Alan Jackson's delivery on this album, and I definitely do, there were points in his vocal delivery where I think he could have stood to try a little bit harder. Now look, I'm not denigrating him here. I'm not denigrating his delivery. It's very measured, it's very calm, it's got a real emotional swell that needs to be there to sell some of this material. But at the same time, I felt he stuck very close to the middle of his vocal range, and he didn't really often venture out of it. He definitely didn't come off like he didn't care per se, but I think this album could have stuck with me or been a little bit more stronger if he gave more of a performance, actually delivered a little bit more passion and emotion in his delivery, pushed himself a little bit harder here. Yet all that being said, the Bluegrass Album by Alan Jackson is great, and you can tell by how hard I'm hunting for potential issues and just coming up short that you can tell by that alone, it's incredibly solid, showing exactly how one should properly experiment within genres, with careful consideration, preparation, and a lot of passion and enthusiasm for his subject matter, all of which that Alan Jackson does have. This album easily earns its 8 out of 10, and I'm happy to see that Alan Jackson can make the album that he's clearly wanted to make for a long time. So now, your move, mainstream country. See if you can top this. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'm very grateful for everyone who's subscribing to my channel. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be very grateful. If there's anything I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or if there's any other albums you'd like me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to take a look. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.